Hey, I'm your host, Melissa, and I want to welcome you to Not Your Average Blonde podcast. I'm here to show you how to elevate your life to become the best version of yourself. I want to take you along your journey to be anything but average and step into your confidence era. Join me each week by subscribing and listening to Not Your Average Blonde podcast, and let's begin our journey to become anything but average. Hello, Not Your Average Besties. I want to thank you for joining me on today's birthday episode. I know the last few weeks I haven't really produced anything. Just been very chaotic, but here we are going forward. So I finally made it to 33 years old, and oh my goodness, there's just so much stuff that we can talk about. Transitioning from your late 20s and into your 30s. But for this year, like I said, I hit the big 3-3, which is kind of crazy, kind of hard to wrap my head around sometimes because I definitely don't feel it. I feel absolutely amazing. And you'll hear me say this probably over and over again throughout this series that I love being in my 30s. This year's birthday, it was pretty anticlimactic in the sense of I spent the day working, and it was actually kind of a shitty day at work. Much rather would have taken my time sipping on sangria and enjoying some fresh seafood in Spain, but kind of low-key regretting not buying those tickets. There at one point was round trip tickets, I think back in January, for $400 from where I lived to Spain. But I let my pragmatic side went out and chose to focus on work and trying to get caught up from being gone so much last year for where I would like to be. So hopefully that time, if I make it a priority, will come to fruition later on this year. I'll be sipping on sangria in Spain and just enjoying my best life. So yeah. So 33, it's another year in my 30s. And I find it so interesting because I listen to a lot of conversations, especially at work, where I'm starting to become one of the more, I guess, senior ones in the organization. We have a lot of people coming in that are in their early 20s, early mid 20s. And you hear people's conversations, especially around their birthdays, and they talk about, how they dread their 30s. They're dreading getting older. They're, maybe 25, 26, or even those that are 28 or 29. And they talk about how they have all these backaches and how they're not looking forward to 30 because they just feel that they're already going downhill, and that in their mind that their 20s is the best time of their life. And they start getting really nervous about it, and they allow so much anxiety to build up about 30 and beyond. But you know what? I fucking love my 30s. It's just, I can't describe it. And I tell every single time I hear a conversation of someone bitching about their 20s, I chime in and just look, I love my 30s. 30s are completely what you make of it. And they're so much better in your 20s. Granted, my 20s sucked. My 20s sucked so badly. But going into my 30s, I feel like I worked through a lot of the issues and some of the challenges and stuff that I had in my 20s, especially my early to mid 20s. I went through some pretty big life events that really rocked me to my core that most people don't usually hit until they get older. I had that happen pretty early on in my 20s, so that didn't help. But I spent the latter part of my 20s just working on me. And now where I am today, you're just in your 30s, you're so much more confident. You know yourself better. You have money. You're a bit more stable in your career. You've been around a block a few times, and you've learned some lessons, and hopefully picked yourself up and moved on. But your worth. You have boundaries. You have standards. Like I said, I absolutely love my 30s. I'm such a different woman today in my 30s and in my 20s, and I absolutely love her. And I've put a lot of work into cultivating who I am, at 33. And I work hard to make my 30s way better than my 20s as well. And like I said, my 20s were absolute. I was insecure. I had gotten married super young. I was 21 when I got married. I got divorced. I was divorced by 25, which him and I had separated actually a couple years before that. We did this whole limp kind of our marriage along. It was a whole thing. I'll do an episode on it later on about that lesson, because that was such a huge lesson learned of just getting married. And honestly, like I didn't really want to get married, but I gave into so much of like the societal and like social pressure that like I had around me for the environment that I was in to get married. And so many people were like, oh, he's such a good man and like he's this and this. And I should have just listened to my gut instinct, which, getting into today's episode, like trust your gut. She knows what's up, like listen to that. But in my 20s, like I didn't trust it. I got married, subsequently got like divorced. Because he was just such a different man, like after we got married than who we were dating. And he had a lot of, we'll just say like dishonesty was like a huge theme, like in like the marriage. It was very difficult to like trust him because like just even basic things, like he couldn't give me the truth. And that was very difficult. It was a time that like fed into a lot of like insecurity and uncertainty for me. And like I said, like I ended up, like divorcing, like in my mid 20s. And like I said, like I'll share my divorce story like in another like episode with it, because that was, I would say, it kind of set me back in a lot of my life, like in my 20s, but it also like really forced me to grow up and kind of like launched me on this journey. So as shitty and as painful as it was, like going through that experience, I definitely wouldn't be the woman who I am today, at least wouldn't have started like on this journey of like developing myself and healing and striving to make myself better. So so that's a brief little like segue or like preview of like future episodes. But going back to like my early 20s, like I did a lot of schooling, which it just felt like it was never going to end. I was that person that did like another year with my undergrad because I was like a nerd and wanted to do like extra classes and stuff. And then after that, I got picked up for like grad school, which came completely out of left field, was not expecting it, so I spent about like half of my 20s like just in school. I traveled quite a bit. I, was able to study abroad for some of it. I started a new job and career. But even with all of that, it was just overall, it was just like a time, just a lot of insecurity and uncertainty. And like I said, like my divorce, it had rocked me pretty good and it kind of like shattered me down to my core, where like leaving that, I was very much like a shell. Like I didn't really like know who I was. And I had to I did. It definitely put me into like a very different place than I ever expected to be in my mid 20s. But it like forced me to, propel myself forward. I also left a high control religion as well too, which is another story with my journey of leaving like the Mormon church. Little preview for you there as well too. Spoiler alert. So I spent like the latter part of like my 20s just like healing and redefining like who I am, and just like defying and leaving behind some of these like old mindsets and things that used to define me, or at least I tried to let it define me in my early 20s, but I never really fit into those molds, which again, like I spent and wasted so much time, which led to a lot of insecurity, trying to fit into those molds instead of just like, you know what, fuck it, like this is who I am, and just embracing who I truly am. And so but with that, like going forward, like I said, taking that time to like heal and grow and develop myself, like it was 1,000 times worth it. Not exactly the same path I would like to take again, but for who I am like today, it was completely worth taking that time, to heal, to grow, to develop myself. And this is a huge reason why like I'm in love with my 30s and the woman who I am today. And personal opinion, just slightly biased, she's a pretty kick-ass woman. She's pretty amazing, and she's worked hard to get here and is completely deserving of this life. And you are too. For those of you that are like listening, that are like in your late 20s, like don't be intimidated by your 30s. Just like grab it by the horns and just run with it. Go forward with it. But going along like this journey, this is why like I started experimenting with social media a couple years ago. I started actually, I think it was like when I was 30 years old. I just had like this epiphany, went through some experiences that just like kind of propelled me a little bit more forward, in the sense of like it validated that like all the hard work that I've put in for the last like couple of years, that gave me that validation at that moment of like, oh my God, like I've arrived, which is pretty cool. And some of it was some training I had like from my job that was like really challenging, and I was a little nervous like going through it, but coming out of it, like I said, it gave me that complete validation that like, fuck yeah, like all that work and effort that I've put in for the last couple of years, and just like building myself from like a really shitty marriage, um, it was worth it. It came through, and like that moment of like, guess what? Melissa has arrived. So I, started experimenting with social media with the intention of just like building and sharing like those lessons learned. A lot of it was focused on like connection, and connection is such a fascinating concept for me because there's so many like facets that go into connection, whether it's like with other people, yourself, and when it comes to other people, it's like your friendships, like your family, the relationship that you have like with your pets and like the environment around you, and like your loved ones. And it's so diverse. And sharing like these connections has been, especially on social media. I mean, one, like social media can be incredibly vulnerable, which is an interesting dichotomy because social media is vulnerable in the sense like you are choosing like what you want to share with the world. And, some people choose to show a facade of who they aspire to be. Others are more raw, where they show like where they are. But then it's also too, it's only like a few seconds, a small snapshot or just like a moment captured in time, like of that person's like journey. And which is pretty cool and kind of crazy too at the same time for the use of social media. But for how I approach like social media, like I said, it started with that connection of journey, but it was purely a form of me wanting to push myself like outside of my comfort zone, and then sharing with other people like that journey of like me transitioning like from my 20s and like lessons learned and like into the 30s. I wanted to share like what some of my highs and like my lows and mostly like the gaps in between. And a lot of that like spurred from actually my divorce. Like when I was like in my marriage, and then even after my marriage, I went through a period where I just completely withdrew from like people. There were a lot of things that like happened like around that time when I was like 24, like 25, and a lot of events that just really kind of pushed me like to retreat back inside of myself. And so I have a period of my life of probably about 3, 4, maybe like 5 years. I'd have to go back there and like see where like I don't have anything. I don't have much like documented in my life. It was such a painful period and such a tumultuous like time during that couple year like span that like I have nothing to show in terms of like memories and stuff for that period of my life. And the highs as well as like the lows. Like I remember even like graduating, like when I was graduating, I do have one picture that I took with like one of my best friends, like when I graduated from my undergrad. And like you could just see just like how sad I was. Like I was just so engulfed in what I was going through like at the time that I wasn't able to enjoy like being in the present. And then that huge accomplishment of, of achieving, this huge milestone that like I'd worked so hard for several years, and something that I definitely had plenty of times where I didn't even think it was going to be like possible. So that's a little bit of the background for why like I'm wanting to like share some of this stuff and share like that journey of how, of like my highs and my lows and like how I made it through it. Cause you don't see that. A lot of people don't share like the gaps in between. They don't share the like their fails. And oftentimes they don't share those lows, and they don't talk about that time and the struggle that it took for them to like to achieve like those successes. And even when they do achieve their success, they're often cryptic about like the methods that they use to get to like where they are. And so I don't want to do that. I want to be like transparent, and there is a lot of vulnerability that comes with it. But I've also, have the mindset and the approach of, that I found over the years as I've have shared my story with just like connections that I've made and just talking with people. I've been amazed at like how many people that have given me the feedback of, like how my experience has helped them out, has given them hope. And that's my approach with this is like, if I can help you change your mindset and your life through like time and like healthy approaches and just those little things, and even through like the failures, like it's not perfect. My journey, I definitely had a lot of like ups and downs, but if I can show you some of that journey and help you through your journey, then that's a win. If it helps just one person, like that's a win in my books. And it also gives me like an opportunity to reflect and like organize like my thoughts. To organize my thoughts and self-reflection. Because at the end of the day, through like that self-reflection and analyzing, I can decide on what action I can take. And action produces momentum. And so all around, like, it's a win, hopefully a win for you. And it's definitely a win for me. The fact that like I'm just doing this. So diving further into this episode, I want to share with you like just a few more of those lessons that like I've learned and that I've had reiterated like over this past year as I've transitioned, from, went from 32 to now 33. So I did a birthday post on my Instagram that kind of went through like some of these like bullet points that I'm going to cover on today's like podcast. But I'm going to expound on them a little bit more throughout this episode, just because I am not limited by space on here like I am on Instagram. And let's be honest, like how many people actually read through like your Instagram captions? I don't know. We'll see. But the first one is if you can't cheer for yourself, you can't expect others to cheer for you. I had quite a few experiences like this last year where like I came into some situations where I was, pretty confident, had, pretty good vibes, was excited for, like that chapter. And I was able to like develop friendships from like a very like genuine and like connective like space. Some of those experiences were they were really rough. They turned pretty sour very quickly. And it really challenged me a little bit where it was quite a bit of a gut punch. And I definitely fell and set back in terms of like my own progress and development, kind of like was questioning myself a little bit, just due to the environment and the situation that I was in. It definitely challenged me on a very, very different level than I had ever expected. But I fortunately had like some of those friendships, and I had set that example like early on to others of, of kind of like having that self-empowered like mindset and that confidence, and was able to like encourage other people like early on and be able to provide like that light and support that like when I needed help and when my light was like dimmed, I had friends and people that were there that were able to like cheer and encourage me like when I was struggling. You need both of those like in your life. You need to both like believe in yourself, and then others will follow as well. It was such a critical lesson that I learned last year. Another one is like your comfort zone is a trap. Now, I'm an Aries. Hello, Aries season. Well, now actually technically we're in a different season now, but do a quick plug there for that. But your comfort zone, I love leaving it. It's definitely more a part of my nature, and sometimes it's hard, but I enjoy like pushing that boundary. But I wholeheartedly believe that like your comfort zone like is a trap. It's so crucial for you to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's good for your soul. It challenges you to keep learning and growing, and it's a form of taking care of like your body and your mind. It's kind of like working out, like you have those muscles, and like when you're, lifting, it hurts and it's kind of difficult. You don't really like it, but over time and with like consistency, like it's good for you. You grow, you develop like from it. And, at the end of the day, like if you don't take care of yourself, like you can't show up for others in the best way that you can. So set that example of like showing up for you, put in the hard work, and like step towards, those things that make you a bit nervous or that you normally wouldn't push yourself outside of. And it can be very like simple things. The next on my list is like health is wealth. I learned this the hard way back in 2021 with COVID. I caught COVID in 2021 and it absolutely kicked my ass. Like it kicked my ass so bad. Like it put me in the hospital a couple of times, and from actually having COVID, and then I had long COVID after that. Whatever like you believe about COVID, I know some people weren't really affected by it and some were very affected by it. I was one that was pretty heavily affected by it, and I struggled with some of the repercussions and after effects of it for about a year after I had it. And like I said, I ended up in the ER a couple of times, and it was a whole thing. That's actually how I spent my 30th birthday. Was I was so sick with COVID. It like I said, it just wrecked me so badly. This last year, it was reiterated again, thankfully not to the extreme of like when I had COVID before, but it just reiterated again, just like how valuable like my health is. Without it, like I can't function. You can't function if you don't take care of yourself. I was working in a lot of very like high stress environments, and that has a very compounding effect. Like it takes a toll that can have some long lasting impacts that, can affect like your mind, your body, your spirit, and just has so many ripple effects. And being in those type of environments for prolonged periods of time last year, it really had some lasting impacts on me that it took me a few months to work through. And to work through them, I really had to prioritize like my sleep, my nutrition, movement of my body, like my cortisol levels, my hormones. Like was a lot, has been, still is a little bit of a lot, but I've gotten better with prioritizing like those three things. And I'll do another episode on that as well, like some of those actions that I took from recovering from like burnout and like high stress environments. But like I said, the biggest things are your health is wealth. And through that, prioritize your sleep, your nutrition, and then moving. Because along with like prioritizing your health, like when you feel good, you're going to attract good things. And good energy attracts like good people. When you have positive energy, it's when your energy is like positive and inviting, it's going to naturally attract positive things like around you. And that's good karma, people, opportunities, experiences, and all of that starts with like your thoughts, from within. It starts from inside. Prioritizing yourself, telling yourself like positive things, as we talked about before, taking care of your health. It exudes from inside out. And when you have a positive mindset, you're going to draw in, like I said, those positive people. You're going to draw in those people that are going to help you out, that are going to encourage you, that are going to be like your friends. You're going to have like those genuine and like deep like connections. Some of them may be short lived and some of them may be like lifelong. But ultimately, by having like good energy, it's going to create an environment of just like warmth and encouragement and positivity. And it's contagious. It's infectious. Like people want to be around that. People want to be around like that light. And it's a good thing, that you can control, you can impact that. But it all starts from within. Next on my list is confusion. Confusion is a warning sign, and it's, something that you should kind of give heed to, as well as like anxiety. Oh, anxiety is a huge one. I feel like I can also do another episode just on anxiety alone. But the biggest takeaway from this I learned about anxiety is that to counter anxiety, the best way to get rid of it is through action or change. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. So if you feel anxious, act on something or change something. And if you experience confusion, it's generally, oh my gosh, I cannot talk, is a warning sign. So next is dealing with shitty people. So there are plenty of shitty people out there. Like I talked about before, like I was in a very, very caustic environment last year for some parts of last year, and it definitely like took a toll. You can't let people's ugly nature like make you ugly. Someone else's actions like don't define you. And the thing is like you can choose like how you show up like in that situation and how you counter that situation. Last year, when I was working in those high stress environments, like I found it interesting, and honestly, it was very difficult. I had a very hard time. It definitely impacted me a little bit like long term. It took me some time to like work through. But the saddest thing about that type of an environment was just watching people devolve to their worst self when faced with the pressure of the type of environment that we were in. And it was sad. It was very, very sad to watch. It was almost like a real time like Stanford prison experiment. And it was shitty to watch. It was shitty to experience. And seeing that and going through that, I made the decision to like not allow myself to use that as an excuse to bring out the ugly nature. I saw so many people who use that excuse of like, well, so-and-so's this way, or this is just the type of environment, or well, this is how the workplace is, and they use that as a justification to be shitty to other people. And it's not okay. That is not an excuse. It's not justification, at least in my books. And I had a really hard time with that people were just so accepting of allowing other people's ugly nature to make them ugly and to bring out the worst in them. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely had days that like I wasn't like proud of, but it was one of those things like I actively fought like every single day to choose not to be that way. Especially on those days when, like I said, it tested me more than others, and I saw a side of me that I wasn't always necessarily like proud of, but lesson learned, you move forward. And I learned that how I choose to show up each day, like it's a choice. It's within my power, to decide like how I'm going to show up. The next on my list is opportunity. So I love this one so much. Because I wrote these out in like kind of bullets like on my Instagram page. But as I'm going through those and talking about it, I love opportunity. I've had a very like atypical path like in my life. And I attribute that to just a combination of things. And the largest thing being, or one of them being, just like being opportunity. There's so much opportunity in this life, and it doesn't matter like where you come from. It's there. And that's where like it starts. It starts with your mindset. And the thing is like you have to be open to it. It's a combination of like your mindset and then taking action like with it. You have to be open-minded and believe that opportunity exists. No matter like where you're from or what's out there, like you have to have that hope and that optimism that that opportunity is there. And those opportunities will come along. And when they do come along, like you have to take the action to try them. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be, like lessons learned. But the thing is like you need to believe that there are opportunities there and they're waiting for you and that the universe is going to provide for you. And then you need to act on them. Take that chance. Push yourself outside of your comfort zone and try it out. Opportunity has pushed me outside of my comfort zone so many times, but it's honestly has led to so many good things. Definitely way more good than bad. The bad usually comes through when I ignore, like I said above, when I ignore like confusion or when I like push confusion, and that tends to lead to bad things. But when it comes to opportunity, when I've said yes to opportunity and I've taken that leap of faith, I've had some really cool experiences in my life and some doors that have opened up that I never would have guessed or never would have expected. And I've met some truly amazing people, and I've had some good people that have come into my life that have shown me, different things, different perspectives, and just a lot of just goodness that comes from it. And it's really cool. Like I said, opportunity is probably one of my favorite things. Next on my list is like happiness and positivity are a choice. Noticing a theme here, like it's all about your mindset. Like a lot of these things is so connected to like how you approach life and the mindset that like you cultivate and that you build for yourself. Now, I wasn't just born with this type of a mindset. Like I've had to be very proactive with developing like my mindset and how I approach things and situations and stuff like in life. And the next bullet point that I have is like a calm mind can handle any situation. It just reiterates that like your mind is such a powerful tool and it has so much impact like on your life and circumstances. Along those lines, excitement. I want to talk about the emotion of excitement just very briefly. Excitement is your intuition. It's heavily connected to your intuition, and it's your soul, your intuition, your spirit, however you want to define it, just saying that something resonates with you. And I highly recommend like you listen to it. It feels good, and it's going to lead to some really cool things that are edifying like for your soul and are going to open up some like more opportunities and things in your life. Along with that note, listen to your intuition. Like when you feel something is off, like listen to it. It could be danger. Like your intuition is there. It's your soul's way of like speaking to you. Like I said, of, things that are exciting and like opportunity and like good things in your life, but it can also warn you about like danger. If you feel it's off, it's, listen to it. Don't do it. Don't go down like that road. Like your soul, your intuition can like pick up on those vibrations and frequencies, and it's there to keep you out of danger and to keep you alive. And going along with those notes, we're talking about like intuition, excitement, like opportunity. I know I'm kind of blending like some of these bullet points, but it's really cool seeing just like how they're all interconnected. Your dreams, like your dreams go unfulfilled, like when you live in fear, when you stay within that comfort zone, when you don't take like that chance. That's, another quick little like blurb I wanted to throw in there. But, follow your dreams, take those chances, take those opportunities on you. Like action is what makes things happen. So the next bullet point that I have is when you find people better than you, don't compete, work together. It kind of like blows my mind, and maybe it is just like human nature, like in general. How, I guess we are like competitive by nature, but just how many people are so afraid of those that like they work with or like their peers, or they view it as a competition. And it's kind of like a sad thing because I've seen it ruin so many especially in the workplace. I've seen it ruin like so many friendships and compatibility in the workplace when people choose to compete and, go into kind of like that darker side of backstabbing or like betraying that person to try to get themselves like ahead. I don't know. That's just not the mindset and the approach that I have. Like if my competition is with myself, as long as I'm trying to do better like the next day, when I find people that are better than me, like I want to work together with them. I want to be able to learn. And, when I'm not focused on competition, like I can focus so much more on, what we're trying to build at hand. when you take that approach of like working together, like you're going to grow in the process. You know, they may be able to learn some things from you too, but like you're both going to grow and to learn. And when you work together, like you can make some pretty cool shit happen. When you bring two people's like energy and focus and experience and, you know, whatever adjective that you want to throw in there, like you could make some pretty cool stuff like happen. But like adopting like this mindset and the belief that like there's enough room at the table, it's helped me so much with being able to truly focus like on my work. I don't stress about over the comparison game of those around me. I don't stress about like what that person's like thinking about me or, you know, trying to impress like the boss. Like I honestly don't give a fuck. It's I'm going to do my best and I'm going to try to work the best I can with those around me and cultivate like a positive environment. And I believe in karma. Like I strive very hard to maintain an ethical boundary of like not backstabbing other people to get ahead and to be genuine and honest with those that I work with. A lot of people look at me probably suspiciously for that, and maybe it's a bit too much of like a genuine approach with genuine, not genuine, but more maybe too much of like a purist approach, I guess, like when it comes to working with people. But you know, that's fine, whatever. They can think that. That's not the reason why like I do it. That's not why I've chosen to adopt that mindset. The biggest reason why I've chosen that mindset is like, you know, I've been backstabbed before. I've been betrayed. Like I've had, you know, those shitty things happen to me and it sucks. But again, kind of going back to what we talked about like earlier in this episode is like just because other people are like that doesn't mean you have to be like that. Just because it's been done to me doesn't mean I should do it to other people. Like it doesn't give you the right, doesn't give you the justification. Like it absolutely kills me when people use the excuse of like, well, this happened to me back then, or well, other people did this to me, so I'm going to do it to other people. And that's just like how, you know, how it is, or how, you know, like all I know or whatever. It's just an endless spew of like excuses, but it's all bullshit. It's complete bullshit. It's all, you can choose to change that. You can choose to break that chain, to like break that pattern. There's no need for you to stoop down into other people's like ugly behavior to like get yourself forward. Like I said, don't compete, work together, make some cool shit happen. You know, and by approaching this, it's, you know, yeah, like I've been hurt like a couple of times, but by and large, at the end of the day, like I like the person that I am and I like the ethics and the morals that like I have. And guess what? Karma's a bitch. That stuff always catches up. So there you go. I'm absolutely really loving kind of just the rawness of some of the candor within this conversation that I'm having with you as I'm going through some of these bullet points and just kind of thinking on them and expanding upon them. There's definitely a few trigger points that get me, you know, riled up, but it's pretty good though. I think, you know, some of these things need to be said, and you know, this is my voice and you're the one that's choosing to listen to it. So thank you again, if I haven't thanked you yet, for joining me on this episode. Um, I'm actually kind of starting to wind down a little bit. I think I've gotten through most of my bullet points. I could definitely write more, but for the sake of like my Instagram post, I didn't write everything I could learned. And for today's episode, I wanted to keep it a little bit more truncated because it's like I said, a lot of these topics I could easily do entire episodes on them. And let me know if there's anything in here that we've talked about today that you want me to expand upon. But, you know, I just want to, you know, impress upon you to like do your inner work. You know, like you're going to repeat what you don't repair, and, you know, it's going to show up at some point. So, you know, take that time, work on you, like I said, little bits at a time. Life's not going to wait for you to be okay. And, you know, like everyone goes through those hard times. Everyone goes through those crucible moments. But like at the end of the day, like you've got to pick yourself up, and you are the one that can make the changes that you want to see. And what better time than like starting now? Like I said, make those small changes. It's all these things that I've had like along like my journey, and like a lot of these lessons learned have been just compounded just over the years of just taking, like I said, just deliberate and conscientious effort, bits by bits, like over time. And has made some really cool things like happen in my life, and has been life changing, especially when it comes to like my mindset and how I approach situations that come up like in my life. And at the end of the day, yet again, like life is short and precious. It's important for you to prepare for the future, but to like live in the moment as well. And, you know, I want you to like embrace working hard, but also like playing hard, and then like loving hard too. And, you know, being like the best person that like you can be. You know, we're not perfect. I'm definitely far from it. But, you know, you said you can maintain like the standards and morals and build yourself into the person that like you want to be, through like these little steps, through these little actions. And so with that, my friends, I want to thank you for joining me on Not Your Average Blonde today. And this is 33. So thank you. And I love you all for your support. Not Your Average Besties. Bye.